Story 1. People have said it before, but it cannot be stressed enough. You and your partner will have different standards of cleanliness. It does not matter how clean you think you are. Your partner will almost always have either a lower or higher standard than you. You have to compromise. It cannot be your way or the highway. Story 2. Everyone needs time alone. Having a hobby or activity that does not involve your partner is healthy. It is also fine to be in the same room and do separate things without interacting. There are caveats to everything I have said, but understand that spending intentional, quality time with your partner is as important as spending quality time on your own interests or hobbies. It is a slippery road to frustration and resentment if you spend every waking hour with another person. Do not wait until you are annoyed by small things they do. Take a walk, read a book, play a game, and encourage them to do the same. Story 3. You have to define what clean means for both of you. If you do not agree on the baseline, you will constantly argue about dishes. Story 4. Your daily routines will not remain the same. You will both need to compromise and develop new routines. Story 5. You don't actually fight about the thing. You fight about the meaning behind it. Story 6. What items are you allowed to take from home for various reasons, and what items should always stay at home? My partner took a can opener to work. I went nuts looking for it, convinced it could not simply have disappeared, and later discovered it had been taken from the house. Story 7. Agree ahead of time whether it is okay to talk to the other person if they are in the bathroom. My ex would try to read me memes from the toilet, while I am the type of person who says, "Do not speak to me unless the house is on fire." Story 8. Figure out what bedtime means. Some people always want to go to bed at the same time as their partners, while others prefer more independence. If you have different needs, address them early to avoid resentment. Also consider what bedtime and the sleeping environment look like. Do you prefer a fan running or windows open, or full silence and darkness like a sensory deprivation tank? What if one of you snores? You may never be angrier at someone you love than when you lie in bed trying to fall asleep and cannot because they like to sleep cold and you cannot get your feet to warm up. Story 9. You are now with them all the time. When you are apart, you can plan and make everything ready for their arrival. You can clean the toilet or take out the trash, and they would not know it is the first time that has happened in 2 weeks. When you live together, that cannot be hidden. Story 10. Learn to give and respect each other's space and privacy. Do not abandon the hobbies and friendships you have outside the relationship just because you are spending more time with your partner. Remember that people need room to breathe under one roof. Do not make your partner the sole source of your happiness, and do not become codependent. Do nice things for each other and always show appreciation. For the love of God, clean up after yourself. Story 11. To a certain extent, if something is important to you, do not wait for the other person to do it or you will become bitter. However, if you find yourself applying that rule to every single thing in the house, you need to have a serious conversation about expectations. Story 12. There is no such thing as common sense. What seems like common sense to you may not be someone else's experience. Story 13. Agreeing on a guest policy is important. Someone will always be more social than the other, so define boundaries about how many people can come over, how often, how much notice is required, and how much the significant other is expected to interact with your friends. Story 14. You still need to set aside time for each other even though you're together every day. You also need to go on dates even though you eat dinner together every night. Story 15. When your partner asks where the remote control for the television is, they are sitting on it. Story 16. If it isn't going to matter 5 months from now, give your partner some grace. Story 17. That clean is not a universal standard. It is a spectrum, a very wide spectrum. Story 18. Respect that your partner or roommate had a life before you, with their own traditions and ways of living that work for them. Do not impose your way of living, thinking, or acting on them unless they ask. Work together and compromise when habits clash. Story 19. Do not say I will do it later. Later does not exist. Pick a time or pair the task with something that occurs before, after, or during another activity. Story 20. I have had to tell partners that I do not pick up subtleties or decode hints. Just tell me what you want. Story 21. Now you will be spending a lot more time together. Congratulations. You have entered a more passive stage of your relationship. You will need to make a deliberate effort to reclaim quality time, because casual time can make you think you are connecting when you are simply sharing the same space. This does not mean you cannot watch television together and call that quality time. For some people, that is enough. For most, however, you need to be actively engaged with one another. Listen and talk about your days. Let your partner rant about Anna from Human Resources or tell you the gossip about her best friend's ex-husband. You do not have to schedule an obligatory date night once a month, though that can help. You need actual time when you are not merely roommates. Story 22. Each of you needs to get your own blanket. Snuggling all night is not realistic. Story 23. You will stop missing each other, but you will miss the feeling of missing one another. Story 24. Most evenings are spent acting out the indecisive vulture's bit from the Jungle Book while trying to pick what to have for dinner. We sure know how to have fun. Story 25. Each partner will exceed the other in different ways. Love, tidiness, financial smarts, thoughtfulness, humor, health, willingness to compromise, happiness. Story 26. This is not so much unsaid as a word of advice. Set boundaries. Just because we live together does not mean we have to spend every waking second together. I had a life before we met and before we moved in together. Please allow me to continue to have one. Story 27. If you are a man, you will be surprised at how quickly your toilet paper supply disappears, especially if your partner urinates frequently. Story 28. Just because your spouse does something differently doesn't mean it's wrong, although how he folds towels is totally wrong. Laughing out loud. My husband and I figured this out before marriage. We differ in whether we want input or solutions to a situation versus just venting. My husband would advise on how to handle a situation when all I wanted to do was vent for a few minutes. For him to listen and offer a sincere "my poor honey" and hug me. Now we start by saying either "I need to vent" or "I need your input on this." Story 29. Do not try to control the behavior of your partner. Learn to be flexible. Not everything is worth fighting about. Story 30. You will both have to adjust to each other's messes. My partner and I have different tolerances for messiness. He wants things neat and tidy, but my attention deficit hyperactivity disorder makes me put everything away in an organized mess. We just clean up after each other. Story 31. If someone behaves irrationally, you may appear irrational simply by responding to them. You will frantically tell your friend to set the refrigerator dispenser to ice because she becomes upset if it is left on water and blindly presses the button expecting ice. Story 32. One of you will be the finder of things, while the other cannot find a tree in a forest. Accept your role, it saves time and annoyance. Story 33. You do not know someone until you have assembled Ingvar Kamprad Elmtrida Gunnerid furniture with them. Story 34. All those quirky pink flags that seemed cute when you were just dating and not living together around the clock are much less endearing. For example, someone who wants to know when you are home from work may be controlling of your time. Someone who always takes you out to eat may not know how to cook or may make poor financial decisions. Someone with a niche interest or job may dedicate any extra space entirely to that interest. My main advice is to make sure you know how household bills and shared expenses will be split before you move in. Story 35. Sometimes doing is better than telling. My partner worked from home full-time and would always forget to bring his coffee mugs, dirty plates, and other items into the kitchen at the end of the day. I used to clean up for him, but since I go to the office once a week, I was not always available. Eventually, I stopped picking up after him because I am not his maid, and he had to deal with a growing pile of dirty dishes. He started cleaning up after himself very shortly after that. Story 36. It's wild how a simple disagreement over a dish in the sink is rarely only about the dish. You're suddenly negotiating your entire definition of order and consideration. That's why agreeing on a baseline for clean is not only housekeeping but relationship maintenance. It forces you to build new shared routines instead of clinging to your old single life habits. Story 37. A guy will let you leave the house with your hair not 100% finished. I was flat ironing my hair and had just asked him if the back was good. And he said yes. I received an award at work, and the picture of me walking up shows the one curly piece I missed, which made me laugh. I always check myself now. First world problems. Story 38. Expect more flatulence than you anticipate from both people. Learn to either laugh about it or ignore it. Story 39. Love doesn't die. It just moves into separate blankets. Story 40. No matter how badly you need to go, wait a few minutes if someone has just used the bathroom. Everyone's waste smells, and love will not change that unless you are nose-blind or the bathroom has excellent ventilation. Story 41. I could go on a rant about my obsessive-compulsive level of cleanliness and opening bottles over a sink, but instead I will say this. If every day you wake up and choose to love your partner more than you want to be right, you will have a good day. Both partners have to buy into that for it to work. I am a 43-year-old man and have been happily married for 20 years. I am not religious. I am a moderately successful business owner, and I have 2 children, one with Down syndrome. Story 42. It's fine means it's not. Learn the tone. Save the fight. Story 43. Sleep habits differ. My husband and I sleep in adjacent twin beds. We keep our space and spread out like starfish. Story 44. You should learn not to count what your partner does versus what you do in the household. Some days you will do more laundry. Other days your partner will do more dishes. If you start to count, you will almost always conclude that you do more than your partner because you cannot see everything they contribute. In the long run, things even out. Story 45. Always communicate about money early, or it will become a huge problem later. Story 46. Never assume your partner's habits won't drive you crazy eventually. Story 47. The placement of objects, such as furniture, can affect people differently. Story 48. There is no greater witness or instrument of passive-aggressive behavior than the thermostat. Also, put in writing how leftovers and doggy bags from restaurants may be shared. Story 49. If you are serious about living with your partner and envision a long-term relationship, begin aligning your goals and decisions with your future as a couple. Do not abandon your family. Continue to love your parents and siblings if they have supported you, but they are no longer your number one priority. Story 50. My partner washes the dishes before putting them in the dishwasher. Story 51. No one is a knight to their squire. One last hurrah for chivalry before you both move in together. Story 52. House rules must become ours, not mine or yours. Not everybody learns that given how many couples split up. Story 53. They will do things that upset you and you will do things that upset them. Try to compromise somewhere in the middle. Most importantly, talk about it. Story 54. I am constantly told I load the dishwasher incorrectly and that items will not be washed properly, even though they always come out clean. Story 55. We women shed a lot of hair, and it will be everywhere. It is not our fault. It is different from the beard trimmings you leave in the sink. Story 56. Even if you are both punctual people, it will take some reconfiguring to be on time for things. You are sharing resources such as time in the bathroom, the closet, and other shared spaces. Those small interruptions to each other's routines really add up. Story 57. You are going to see each other every day, which means you will have to take the good with the bad. When you are not preparing to see each other, you cannot always be on, so neither of you will always be at your best. Give each other some grace. Story 58. You can't be an individual all the time anymore. You're part of a couple now. If you can't deal with that, be single and don't waste your partner's time. Otherwise, grow up, learn to make reasonable sacrifices, and understand what you can expect in return from your partner. It's a cliché to say, but it's true. There are many selfish people who only care about what their partner does for them and who use excuses about their mental health. If you cannot do the basics of being a decent human being to your life partner, don't be selfish. Story 59. Set your boundaries for space clearly from day one. If both names are on the lease and the other person pays rent, they may have the right to stay as long as they choose. Any personal space you want going forward is your responsibility to create. Story 60. You don't really know a person until you live with them. You see sides of them they hid during the dating stage. Story 61. People have different standards for what they find annoying. Story 62. How to compromise. There used to be a time when I thought I had non-negotiables, but the more I dated and lived with various partners, I realized I was more flexible than I thought. I have been married for more than 10 years. My husband had a non-negotiable about money matters. He wanted finances to be equal. I required equal responsibility for household chores. When we moved in together, I earned more than he did. Both of our careers have changed. He began financially supporting me because he believed in my passion for the arts, and we agreed I would gradually leave my job to pursue it. He now earns what we used to earn combined and has become our primary financial supporter. I now make sure he does not have to cook or clean. Since we recently bought a house, I take on new projects such as removing damaged insulation downstairs and installing rock wool, taking off baseboards and spray foaming, clearing leaves from the gutters, repairing the roof, and chopping wood and kindling for the wood-burning stove, etc. He still helps when I ask, but for the most part try to make sure he does not have to do much so he can enjoy his time outside of work. We also have separate hobbies and enjoy parallel play. I love art and working on the house. He loves gaming. At first, before I rekindled my passion for art, I resented that he would work and then come home to game while I worked and came home to do chores and watch TV. That was my issue to resolve, and I addressed it within the first 2 years of renting an apartment together. Story 63. As a man, just let your wife place everything in the kitchen where she wants. You might think you know where everything should go, and then... Story 64. Where do you want to eat? I do not care. You pick. Suggests 3 places. No, not those. This conversation will happen weekly. There is no solution. Accept your fate. Story 65. A big part of a relationship is practical responsibilities. Money, long-term goals, chores, and so on. Love is easy. It is the dirty, hard work that can destroy it. Story 66. You and your partner being willing to accept or tolerate differences will go a long way toward living together compatibly. What is familiar or expected for you may not be for them, and vice versa. Identify and discuss your non-negotiables early on. Story 67. I don't think unspoken rules are the way. You should communicate about the things you're learning from living together. Listen, share, explain, change where needed, and compromise. If they stay unspoken, that's a recipe for misunderstanding and confusion. Then frustration, passive aggression, and worse follow. Speak about it kindly and compassionately. Story 68. Too many people are not having serious conversations or thinking about the long-term effects of being with someone who does not share their beliefs. Story 69. Do not fart in the shower. You will hotbox your boyfriend. Story 70. Honestly, I had to learn that I will do far more cleaning than the other person, and it is best to accept that. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.